Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are around the world. I'm Dan McFadden, your MC for our webinar today. I'm the co-founder and managing director at Edalex and also a director at Skills Aware. And we're really thrilled to have a fantastic webinar discussion with all of you today, focusing on the journey from validation to visibility, building a connected skills ecosystem with XCredit. So let's dive in. We really have a fantastic agenda. We have some wonderful speakers for you today, and we really want to explore the why, give you context around the XCredit solution, and really take a human lens, but also a technical lens. And so look at the why, the how, explore some of the technology behind the magic, but ultimately spend a bit of time talking about real learners and their impact from XCredit, and then finish off with some lessons from the field. And we're allowing some time. Well, we have such great content we want to share with you. We're also allowing some time for Q&A at the end. So again, feel free to, we can chat throughout the session, but certainly feel free to pop questions into the Q&A session. But without further ado, let's get rolling. So as we kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. For me here in the southeast suburbs of Melbourne, Australia, it is the Boonwurrung people of the East Kulin Nation. So I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And also would like to acknowledge any First Nation peoples joining us from around the world. So let's then move in, and I'll do very brief introductions of each of our panelists. And then as they speak, we'll ask them to give a little bit more of a background on themselves. So joining me today, we have Tara Lachlan, who's the Director of Skills Development and Validation at Education Design Lab. Mary Guads, a software architect at Unicon. Margot Griffith, one of my colleagues, who's the Principal Skills Consultant at Edalex, and myself. So let's dive right in. Tara, please take it away and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with all of you today, and a special shout out to any members of the lab's Skills Validation Network who may be in attendance. I am, as Dan mentioned, the Director of Skills Development and Validation, which means I get to oversee the portfolio of work at the lab really related to the development and validation of our durable skills, which includes our competency framework, our micro-credentials, our courses, and our assessments. And in this webinar, you'll get an up-close look at some of those tools. So excited to share that with everyone today. The why behind what we're going to share with you today, this is not going to be shocking news for any of you who follow the learn and work ecosystem, but the traditional model of education just isn't cutting it in terms of preparing learners for the world of work. So on the learner side, they're developing skills outside the classroom that are going unrecognized. The courses they do take are not well connected to the real world of work. The courses and assessments they're taking require time that many learners and earners just don't have. And in addition, there is no credit provided for skills that are gained along the way towards that credential. So you think about the large, some college, no degree population who may exit their program early with nothing much to show for it. On the other side here, for institutions and workforce organizations, there isn't a scalable validation and credentialing solution they can use, providing them with reliable data. And traditional education is misaligned with employer needs. So what you see on the screen here, these are the issues we sought to tackle with the XCredit ecosystem that this group of folks and some of our colleagues who are not presenting with us today developed. Next slide. And before we get into the how, I just want to bring my colleague, Mary Guads, into the conversation. Mary?
Thanks, Tara. Hello, everybody. I am Mary Gwads, and I am a software architect from Unicon, and I specialize in standards-based integrations. And my role in this project was the integrations architecture SME, and we'll get to hear more about that in a little while. So back to you, Tara.
That means Mary herself is the glue that held the ecosystem together. I cannot say enough about her role in facilitating the interoperability among these, count them, 7 organizations. If you look at this slide here, you can see that this ecosystem was a collaborative effort to validate and credential durable skills among 7 different partner organizations, which is no small feat. So we're going to share with you today how we did that. Next slide, please. So briefly, what is this project? What is the XCredit ecosystem? Walmart generously provided funding to Education Design Lab to build out an end-to-end skills validation ecosystem. That sounds like probably a lot of jargon, but we're going to show you what that looks like, essentially just to prove that it could be done. So the XCredit program at this point consists of not only the vendors and the partners on the previous slide, but also those who have entered into pilots of the ecosystem, offering the lab's durable skills assessments and credentials. So you can see here the logos of our past, current, and forthcoming pilot partners focused on improving economic mobility and outcomes for Black talent, for the military-aligned community, those working in workforce development, embedding this into the hiring process, testing it with high school learners, as well as a forthcoming pilot with gig workers. So we've really been testing this solution with in many different use cases. Next slide, please. At the foundation of what we're going to share with you today the lab's durable skills competency framework, which is made up of 9 competencies, which you can see here on the screen. And by durable skills, we mean things like critical thinking, creative problem solving, oral communication. Each of these competencies has an associated digital micro-credential that can be earned by individuals who demonstrate their skills in any of these areas. So this is the foundation of this solution. Next slide, please. One unique aspect of the lab's frameworks, I know typically we like to think of frameworks and taxonomies as rows and columns, but at the lab, we actually like to think of ours as a metro map. And that is because there are very intentional intersections baked in to our competencies. And so, for instance, if you look on the far right-hand side, if you find the fuchsia oral communication line and hop on the train, you will see that we pass through speak with clarity and precision, storytelling, and appropriate tone and word choice. But at the end of that line, when we get to listen actively, we have actually come to a 3-way hub, because the listen actively sub-competency is not only a component of oral communication, but also of empathy as well as collaboration. And this, for those of you competency-based education as well as technology nerds out there, and I say that proudly because I am one, you will recognize quickly what a technical challenge these intersections create in trying to validate and credential these skills. Next slide, please. And those challenges are exactly where Mary comes in.
Yes. So a little bit more about what I did to help out on the project. In my role as an integrations architecture SME, my job was to understand how each component functioned behind the scenes to predict potential issues and recommend solutions. I also facilitated discussions between stakeholders, translating between technical and non-technical. I developed and executed a quality assurance test plan, and I also provided technical troubleshooting and problem solving. But in this presentation today, I'll largely be focusing on the first bullet point for how all of the pieces fit together. So we can go ahead and dive into that. So when a learner enters the XCredit program, this is done by them logging into Education Design Lab's D2L instance, where they will pick the first competency that they want to show mastery of. Then they will select an assessment, which was constructed in Muzzy Lane's LTI tool, and take this assessment to validate their skills. Once a skill has been validated, Credentialate becomes aware of this and issues a credential using DCC or Credly, automatically sends it to Smart Resume, and emails the learner to inform them that they can set up their Smart Resume, view it, view their evidence record, and begin showcasing their skills to potential employers. Next, we're going to dive deeper into this process so you can see how it looks for the learner. All right, so learners start with a self-paced experience choosing from the 9 competencies in Education Design Lab's Durable Skills Framework that you see on the screen here. And then they can also select which sub-competencies to tackle first so that they can fit their assessments around their schedules and resume at any time, giving them true control over their learning journey. So using D2L's competencies and conditional release features, XCredit ensures that once learners master a sub-competency, like demonstrate self-awareness, they don't need to retest it again across competencies. This respects their time and prior achievements. Next. All right, so as seen here, Education Design Lab's assessments were built within Muzzy Lane to simulate real workplace scenarios. Learners are challenged to demonstrate skills through realistic, contextual decision-making and not abstract multiple-choice tests. So that's a good example of that. I think we can go on to the next slide. So if a learner doesn't demonstrate mastery of the competency from the 4 main sub-competency assessments, they're presented with a survey asking them to select what industry theme they would like for their final second chance assessment to have, deepening the level of learner personalization and agency even more. All right, and now I will introduce Margot, who was integral in getting the tech put together for this project.
Oh, thanks, Mary. So I'm Margot Griffith. I'm the Principal Skills Consultant for Edalex. And like Tara, that gives me permission to really nerd out on the complexity of this model. And whilst I do, appreciate the kudos around me figuring out the technology, I was literally the conductor of all the moving parts, and there's some very talented people in Edalex that actually were the architects that built all of this. So I'm going to hand you back to Mary, and I'll talk a bit more about the role that Edalex played underneath the hood. Mary?
Yes, so to pick up our story where we left off, the XCredit program was relatively easily able to accomplish having no redundant assessments despite the overlapping sub-competencies, as well as providing second chances to learners in a personalized way just by using the features that come out of the box with D2L. However, the meat of our partnership was around showcasing skills even without a full credential, which I will give a quick overview of on the next slide. Learner personalization, agency, and real-world connection are extremely important, but we believe that what really makes the XCredit program shine for learners is its automated credentialing system that's orchestrated by Edalex's Credentialate, connecting all of these platforms together and enabling learners to showcase their skills to employers in real time, whether or not they've attained a full credential. Each learner's competencies and sub-competencies that they've demonstrated are tracked in D2L to ensure no duplication for overlapping sub-competencies. That's seen in the green oval at the top of the screen. Credentialate pulls these down and checks to see if the new D2L award corresponds to a competency or sub-competency. If the learner has achieved a sub-competency skill, then they are issued an Open Badges 3 evidence record through DCC's issuing platform that is then sent to Smart Resume. If this is the first sub-competency award the learner has earned, then they are sent an email inviting them to set up their Smart Resume where they can immediately showcase their validated skill to employers. Once the learner demonstrates mastery of a full competency, then they are issued an Open Badges 2 record through Credly that is automatically added to their Smart Resume. Within this system, learners don't have to think about how to showcase what they can do to employers, and each achievement that they gain along the way motivates them to continue and makes it easier for them to speak to their skills. So now Margot will go over this in a little bit more depth.
Right. So as you can see, there are a lot of moving parts on that. First and foremost, what we wanted to do was the learner cannot know any of this is going on in the background. It has to be an absolutely seamless experience for the learner. So while we're lifting the lid, on the duck legs under the water that's making all this magic happen, the learner absolutely does not know that this is going on. And so what we've really been trying to do is what we are is the orchestration layer to make sure that all of the signals that are coming from the various platforms are going to represent for the learner their stage of learning, so that we're not holding everything hostage until they complete a credential, right? We want an EDL was like the reason that they have their Metro map is that learners do need to have this just-in-time recognition. And that is difficult from a technical perspective right here, right now. And so bringing all of those different elements together is where Credentialate shines. Basically, that's what we do. We are the signal conductors. What we didn't want to do was have any redundant badges, right? The issue of utility is very, very important for learners. And so just badging at every point really doesn't help the learner to tell their story. And so what we had to do was have a way of making those sub-competencies visible using Smart Resume without baking all of the badges. And so the badges are only baked when they've got all of the sub-competencies necessary for the overarching competency. It was a first-of-kind DCC integration, as in we were using the open source code from DCC to enable us to send that signal to Smart Resume, and when it was completed, send that signal to Credly to bake the badge and then bring it back down into Smart Resume. So we really are acting as that conductor in terms of where the data flows to. It was really important to have that data accurately processed, right? There's no margin for error here. And so, we really pride ourselves at Edalex, and particularly with the Credentialate platform, is that the rules and the data flow represents the model that is required. And in this case, the EDL model is quite a complex model. And so we're very proud of the fact that we could execute this with the learner being none the wiser. It's a very seamless experience. And this is a scalable framework. We can apply this to other models, and we particularly shine when those models are complex. So next slide, thanks. And so just a really quick recap here. The way that we can visualize a skill, which is a sub-competency, is by utilizing what we call a personal evidence record. So in drawing all of the data from D2L, we're packaging that up into a personal evidence record that is then sent to Smart Resume. And in that way, we can recognize progression towards mastery of a competency or a skill. Again, that sounds really easy to say from a technical perspective. It's fairly difficult, and we're proud of the technology that we've built to actually recognize and represent what happens as we're learning. So yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. And so this issue of utility for learners was also very important for all of us. And I'm going to call out Smart Resume, because being able to collate that from a learner perspective, and to be able to talk about your skills as you acquire them, with the view to either getting a job or getting a better job, was the central tenet, really, and the central tenet for EDL. And I'm probably talking on Tara's behalf, but that's the design principle we started out with: skills visibility from the get-go. And so yes, Credentialate really sits amongst all of this as middleware, or the orchestration layer, to pull all the data together to make sure that it's going to the place it needs to go, when it needs to go there, and that we are giving that full just-in-time visibility for the learners. Thanks. Next slide. Okay. Just a very quick view here. We are now in the Smart Resume record, and in clicking on View My Smart Resume, this is going to take you to that personal evidence record that I was telling you about. Okay. It's taking a little bit of time, but at this point in time, there's a decision. You can either download the full credential, or you have the opportunity to view your personal evidence record. And this video is taking a little bit of time to actually show that. Yeah, here we go. In this case, this is a demonstration with the beautiful Tara. But you can see here that each of the skills are represented here, and the overarching competency is speak with clarity and precision. And so you would have noticed in the top side of that this is a pending record, which means this is not a credential that has been baked cryptographically. This is one of the ones that is showing progression towards the overarching competency. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to turn it back to Tara, because the real value is the impact on the learners. It's why we're doing all of this. Tara?
Thank you. I want to take one step back and just double click on some of the foundational pieces behind this project. Education Design Lab entered into this work with the core belief, and I know our partners share this belief with us, that there's so much about what an individual knows and is able to do that they just have no tangible documentation of, and no way to signal to potential employers, which really holds them back in terms of their ability to advance in their careers to that next step. And so the entire emphasis of this project, the reason it's called XCredit, that stands for experience credit. And so this isn't necessarily a learning first opportunity, like you might think of a traditional experience. You take a course, then you take an assessment, and then maybe you earn a credential, if you're lucky. We have flipped that model on its head by positioning the assessment first. So individuals from all walks of life, you saw our pilot partners on an earlier slide, veterans, we have single parents, folks applying for jobs, Black talent, come in with durable skills that they have gained through work experience, through life experience. And they're immediately presented with that opportunity to take the assessments, validate or prove what they know, and stack the evidence towards the credentials, with all of that porting out into, thanks to Credentialate's orchestration layer, into the Smart Resume. We've done the DCC wallet now, and I've seen some questions about this, but this data can be sent wherever we need it to go. The data and the credentials can be sent wherever we need it to go. But the point is, there was no superfluous learning that had to take place, just the opportunity for demonstration. So I just wanted to make those couple of things really clear because I neglected to highlight those up front. With that in mind, I want to tell you just a couple of stories about folks. We've had, I think, close to 7,000 to 8,000 learners go through this experience at this point. And I want to just highlight a couple of stories of the impact that this has had on people given this opportunity. Validate your skills, earn the credentials, take your data and credentials with you where you need to go. The first is Brian. Brian came to the XCredit program through Hire Heroes USA. And pause right there for me, Chris, because I've got the animations baked in here. So he's 39. He lives in San Antonio, Texas. He is a father of 2. His kids are in college, and he's a veteran. He served 8 years active duty in the military. Okay, go ahead, Chris. Here's one of our quotes from Brian about his experience. He said, "I thought it," meaning XCredit, "was such a good idea. Everybody says I'm a great communicator. I've got great critical thinking skills, but it adds a little bit more, especially for hiring managers, to see someone who's actually gotten those skills validated through a reputable source." Okay. And this is one of our favorite success stories because Brian leveraged his durable skills credentials as part of his process to get hired at Ernst & Young, EY. And this second quote here, this is an unsolicited email that he sent back to us upon being hired at EY. He said, "I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, some of the scenarios in these modules forced me to think about situations and methods I hadn't considered in a while and truly helped me to succeed in my interview with Ernst & Young." So he wanted to let us know the impact of engaging in this experience in leading to this outcome for him, which was really powerful. So that is our first story. Really excited for Brian. Next slide, please, Chris. This is Emily. She also found XCredit through Hire Heroes USA. She is 22 from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she is a military spouse. So this wasn't veterans only. This was the entire military-aligned community who had access to this. And she is interested in a career in either marketing or psychology. So in her own words, Emily felt that the XCredit experience really helped refresh her memory on a lot of good skills that I have. Again, just like Brian, pointing to that existing experience. And it also helped to build my resume where I can make it look better to all the different jobs I'm pursuing. One nice thing about durable skills is they are broadly transferable and relevant across industries. So Emily described her key benefit of participating in XCredit as the impact it had on her confidence. And I just want to pause and say, I know after Brian's story where the impact was a job offer, it can sound a little squishy to say that the impact here was improved confidence. However, for this individual person, this was a very big deal. She started with us while she was doing job interviews. Those of you in the job market know how taxing that can be, especially when it takes a long time to get that next opportunity. After validating her skills through XCredit, or actually I should say, before participating in XCredit, she was starting to get into a cycle of self-doubt. Really doubting herself, doubting her capabilities, thinking that she was never going to find that next right thing. And the XCredit experience, validating the skills, earning those credentials, had a significant impact on her confidence by giving her that tangible proof. It wasn't just something she could say, it was something she could show. So for her, that was very meaningful. And our third story here is Akachi. Akachi did decline to have his headshot shown as part of his story. We absolutely respect his decision on that. He came to XCredit through the 110 Coalition. If you're not familiar with them, they are an organization dedicated to helping 1 million placing 1 million Black talent into good jobs in the next 10 years. So we partnered with 110. Akachi came to us through that partnership. He's 26, he's from Houston, and you can see here some of the other hats he wears. He's a caretaker of his sister's kids, and he's a volunteer. I Googled Catch a Fire, by the way, after speaking with Akachi. I encourage you to do the same. It's a pretty cool organization. Akachi's statement about XCredit is, knowing that I've taken a course confirms that I have the skills, or that I know how to implement these skills in a work environment. The employer, sees that it's validated because I have my XCredits, which is what he called his credentials, on his resume, and they see it on my LinkedIn as well, so they know it's a real thing. And he described the benefits of XCredit as being noticed by employers, specifically pointing to a few interviews, Verizon and Church and Dwight, who expressed interest in his XCredit badges. It was a talking point that they brought up during the interviews. So Akachi believes that this is because validated skills stand out compared to what he called generic resumes. So those are 3 of our specific learner stories among many. We do also have a publication that I'll drop in the chat shortly that goes deeper into some of our learner stories and their experience with the platform. On the next slide, we're gonna go quantitative. So this solution has touched over 4,500 learners. My 7,000 figure earlier was off the mark, disregard. This is the correct information. Maybe I got the 7 from the next stat, with over 700 Credly badges issued and over 5,000 sub-competency evidence records shared since going live. Let me break that down. Mary and Margot showcased the ability for learners to validate individual skills on the path to the credential. Again, we're talking about that some college, no degree concept. Think of this as some skills on the way to a credential. At every milestone that learners reached, they were rewarded with validation of those individual skills. Hence, the 5,000, that is the number of individual skills that we were able to validate through the program. And then many learners went on to stack those together to get the full competency credential, which is reflected by the 700 badges. We had 8 organizations participating in the pilot, and over 100 learners have activated their smart resume to start showcasing that information to potential employers. I'm going to pass it back to Margot and Mary for some reflection on the process and lessons learned.
And just before I let you go through that, just a reminder, and we have a number of questions already, but feel free to drop questions in the Q&A section, and we'll endeavor to answer them and continue the discussion.
Well, I'll go with my bit first, Mary, and then turn it over to you. And I've only got a couple of lessons from the field. And number one is that it was really advantageous to have a clear mission and vision on this. EDL were very clear around what they wanted this to look like for learners. The learner-centric design process they always employ meant that we had a firm anchor point in knowing exactly how this had to play out. Yes, there were some technical difficulties under the hood, because just because you are an organization that designs to open and interoperable standards doesn't mean that you all fit together. And so that was really the Edalex role, was to make sure that as we're passing the data from one system to another, that happened in a way that didn't involve friction, particularly for the learner. And I'm going to finally say the main lesson from this is to work with wonderful partners who are aligned with your vision for what this should look like in a skills-first ecosystem. I think that goes for any kind of collaboration that you have, finding the good people. But it really does help that we were all very much wanting this to succeed. So Mary, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I want to reiterate a lot of what you said, but add a little bit more color to it. I agree completely that by Education Design Lab having a very clear vision of what they wanted for this was extremely helpful. And it enabled me to be able to dive in and find out exactly where those where the overlapping sub-competencies were coming in. Could we use grades? Did we have to use D2L awards? That was one area that we had to look at much more closely, is how to get the D2L integration put together. That's a side of it that didn't have standards, which always brings a little bit more challenge. And then another area where knowing Education Design Lab's mission was extremely helpful is trying to prioritize in testing. And so I came up with a testing plan that went all the way from when the learner logs in to D2L through achieving their awards, and then receiving that email that Credentialate sends, informing them of their SMART resume. And so going through all of that process, making sure that we covered all of the possible different scenarios was a really important lesson there, so that we could catch each possible thing that might not look right in the UI, and make sure that it's clear to us how the learners are going through the process, so that we could continue to iterate to make it even clearer for them. And so making sure to keep the learner at the forefront is a huge important lesson, as well as what Margot was saying about how it's just really awesome to work with a great team. And so we were able to get this across the finish line and have the impact that we've had, and we're excited to continue having it. So I think I'll leave it there.
And I'm just going to add one more thing. Yes, Edalex is based in Australia. Both Dan and I are coming to you from Australia. Mary and Tara are beaming in from the US, but this is not a US or an Australian problem. This is a global problem, and we all come together to solve this wicked problem around skills visibility, no matter where we're located. So we made it work, and you can make it work. So I'll leave it there and pass back to you, Dan.
Wonderful. I might hand it back to Tara briefly. Yes.
Yeah, I just will keep it real brief, but this ecosystem development project is brought to you by Walmart. Walmart.org provided the funding to enable all of this work to happen, specifically our program officers, Patty Konstantakis and Sean Murphy. And so I just want to be sure everybody knows and can join us in appreciating their support.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tara. Well, what a wonderful session so far. And I think one of the areas that often gets lost in the noise are those real learner stories, the real people that are impacted. And it's wonderful to virtually meet those three and see the impact. And it was wonderful seeing the chat questions and comments going off in the chat. So again, reminder to pop any additional questions into the Q&A, but let's switch over to that. So Peter had flagged, and thank you for your chat and questions, Peter. You'd flagged some questions around the mapping of the lab's durable skills competency model to America Succeeds' framework. So Tara, can you expand on that a little more?
I can. So to none of your surprise, there are many frameworks in existence, and they are not all identical, which creates challenges. And so the lab has a durable skills framework. America Succeeds as a durable skills framework. We know folks using NACE and ONET and a variety of other ways of defining, articulating durable skills. Our goal here, which I think should be everyone's goal, is to align and take the best of what is in all of these frameworks. So to that end, we have been intentional about identifying the ways that the lab's competencies align and map to the competencies in all of these other durable skills frameworks that exist. Really with the goal being understanding if individuals are using or in a system that's using any of these other frameworks, is there still a pathway to them being able to validate their skills and earn the credentials? And the good news is we have found significant overlap among these frameworks, to the point where on the NACE side, we've actually been able to start awarding some of the lab's credentials to individuals who are going through a NACE-aligned curriculum. For those non-US folks, that's the National Association of Colleges and Employers, I believe, that's what that acronym stands for. And so the mapping has been done. It's shown a lot of overlap, and not everyone with a framework has credentials attached to the framework. And so that's where the lab is trying to support by making the credentials available, regardless of sort of, which pathway folks have come through. Hopefully that's helpful.
Correct. Thanks, Tara. The next question came in from Laura asking around is the content WCAG compliant for digital accessibility? And assuming that refers to the Muzzy Lane simulations. So Tara, I think another one for you.
It's an easy answer, yes.
Great. Obviously, yeah, really important in this day and age. And then we had a few questions around digital wallets, LER, wallets, W3C, VC, verifiable credential, compatible wallets. I think we talked about this a little bit. I'll expand a little bit and then throw it back out to the group. So we obviously are using Smart Resume in that capacity, and we were one of the inaugural uses of their SkillSync interfaces. So we're very proud to have partnered with Smart Resume there. But standard compliance is at the foundation of this. So we flagged that we've used DCC as well as Credly. And so those open badge compliant platforms do have the ability to interact with a number of different wallets. For us, it was showcase bringing those seven partners together, but certainly the model and the flexibility is very much extensible. But yeah, I'll throw it out to others to weigh in on that.
I think you explained that very well, right? The reason that we can act as that signal director or the orchestration layer is because of the standards that we all employ.
Yeah. And then I might just tie Risa's question around whether or not this approach could be brought to Australia and plug into other capability frameworks, such as the human capability standards and other tools, such as different LMSs. So Margot, I might let you expand on that one. It's related, yeah.
Again, that's a pretty easy answer, and it's yes. We do have strong integration capabilities with certainly all of the learning management systems that are employed in the formal learning environments, and we have the capability and the ability to integrate with any other systems. And the other end, as in how we can recognize the learning, again, we can take the data, we can utilize the models that are being deployed, and then we can recognize in the way that needs to be recognized. So that's the piece around learner utility. That's the piece where Smart Resume comes in, where wallets would come in, where learner employment records would come in. So yeah, that is kind of our superpower, being able to really make the model work from a data perspective. So it's a very easy answer, yes. And I also see that there is a bunch of conversation happening around funding, which is another Pandora's box, which we will open. Back to you, Dan.
Wonderful. Thanks, Margot. And I know this one was answered online, but I think it's Wendy Palmer's asked a wonderful question around the funding coming from Walmart, but what does it mean in the real world, in the wild? And Margot, you flagged that, we have representatives. We happen to have representatives from Australia as well as the US here, but it's not a solution that's just restricted to those. But Tara, maybe you can reply live to Wendy's question.
Well, I wish I had an easy answer for this one, like I did with the WCAG, but it certainly remains a challenge, Wendy, and I'm glad that you asked the question. I know this project in particular was funded as a demonstration project to answer the question, can this be done? And if so, how? And it took us 3 years to do this. And one of the slides we took out of the presentation, but I'll make a verbal reference to, is the way we kind of had to swap partners and technologies in and out and in and out and in and out to find the right combination of both people and tech to get this across the finish line. It was certainly challenging. And we learned a lot along the way, though, right? We have this functioning solution now. So my hope, and I don't want to sound naive and, like I'm downplaying the challenges or the funding requirements, but my hope is that the lessons learned from this project and the fact that it was achieved can at least start the process of, other organizations hopefully looking to come together in a similar capacity, trying to build something out. But yeah, I don't have a great answer about the dollars. And I would, Margot's raising her hand. I was going to say, I'll toss that one to the group.
I'll take this in a slightly provocative way. I think the complexities of the US market, you are also fortunate to have foundations like Walmart and other philanthropic organizations who recognize the need that you can't just solve for parts of this ecosystem. You've really got to look at the end to end. And I think the beauty of being able to be involved in this process with you is that we could solve for the end to end, right? And so many of the pilots, or where the money flows for so-called pilot programs, is looking just at a section. And certainly in Australia, I don't feel, and it's going to be a little bit, provocative, but I do not feel that we have the environment to have an innovation test bed like this, because so much of what we do is government funded. And so it is certainly our privilege to be able to, enter into these kind of projects with you where there is that funding available. But it's a problem, and not just in Australia, it's a problem globally, where if we're serious about solving this problem, then we have to seriously put in some places where these test beds can happen. And it's only in employing this end to end that we're going to find out both where the sticking points are, but also where the unintended consequences come from, because we have to design, as we all know, to do no harm. And I think it's only in that testing and the process that we can, confidently state that, like we have with XCredit.
Brilliant. Well, and you're certainly getting some feedback and support and agreement, Margot, in the chat. Wonderful. We have one more in the. Actually, maybe we have a couple coming in. So please, really loving this discussion. Bill had posed a question that Mary you answered online, but I think it's worth also expanding it. So Bill's question was, how does the tech or the prompting help learners connect their validated durable skills to job description? That's a really, really important link.
So I answered this one saying each of the evidence record badges include detailed descriptions of the skills and competencies mastered, as well as links to OpenRSD. This enables Smart Resume to use the data in these records to help connect the learners to potential employers. Hearing the question again, I think there's another more learner-centered approach and less tech-centered approach to this answer. I also think that the learners, just by going through the experience of the assessments within Muzzy Lane, I think that also deepens their own understanding understanding of the skills and competencies, so that they can then connect it to job descriptions, even if they don't bother reading their credential that has all of this awesome information in it. And so I think either way, there's that they get more connected to employment.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I'll just double down on that. Like, the way the assessments work is authentic workplace-based experiences. The learners are dropped into a workplace context, given a role to play and a problem to solve and a cast of characters to interact with, sometimes a set of documents and data to interact with. And it's very, very real world in that sense. And so when thinking about job transitions, job interviews, and job descriptions, I think the fact that the assessments do play out in that context can help them see the connections a little bit more clearly.
And I'm building on top of your comments, Tara. The simulations provided or powered by Muzzy Lane are not just a slam dunk. And I think, Mary, you had firsthand experience of, Tara, you put in the chat that Mary, as part of that testing regime that we talked about, you had to go through 100 times, but you didn't get it correct. You did the first time, right? So it actually you had to go back and reflect and try again, and to really think about those skills. And that is validation of that authentic assessment, that it's not just tick, 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 done. But actually people have to put some serious thought and reflection into it. And even the statistics bear that out, that a number of people have achieved individual sub-competencies, but not necessarily the full competency, which is still, there's wonderful recognition in those sub-competencies individually as well.
And I'll just add, Dan, it's slightly out of scope of this conversation, but it is relevant to this topic. We have learning as well. This particular ecosystem is facilitating an assessment and badging process. What we do offer here, though, is, let's say Dan goes through the critical thinking experience and he validates 3 out of 4 of the sub-competencies required. We then unlock learning content for Dan in that 4th component so that he has the opportunity to go upskill, come back and take the second chance assessment that Mary mentioned earlier in her remarks. So we learned pretty quickly early on that having assessments only was not sufficient, right? People want to close those gaps once they know that the gaps are there.
Brilliant. Good. Yeah, nice exchange there. Margot, coming back to you, a question from Divya with a follow-up question, just asking whether or not a model like this could tie into the National Skills Passport conversation here in Australia.
Hi, Divya. Yes, of course it could. I think the issue with the National Skills Passport is less of a technical issue and more of a clear mission issue. And so, yeah, as I said before, in executing on the vision for EDL, we knew what the model was. I think with the National Skills Passport, there's a couple of fundamental issues that the government still need to articulate, and that is, what's their version of a skill? Is it just a qualification, or are they going to go deeper, like we have here with EDL, to the actual skill level? Yes, we can make it work technically, of course. The technical capabilities are definitely at a maturity stage where that could all happen. I think there are just some deeper issues and conversations that still need to happen to articulate what they clearly want to happen, if that makes sense. And I'm happy to chat with you more about that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Margot. And we've got one more question, a great one from Caroline, who, and I think this is, Tara, another question for you. How have you approached evaluating the impact of this initiative for example, employment outcomes, employer perceptions, et cetera. So building on that anecdotal as well as the quantitative.
Yeah. Well, I will say in terms of employment outcomes, the information we have remains largely anecdotal. One challenge of being an intermediary organization, the way the lab is that we're delivering these experiences to learners through our partners. We have 8 partner organizations whose learners are coming into the XCredit experience, validating the skills, earning the badges, and then leaving. We don't actually have direct contact with those learners. We have, we're doing the best that we can to work with and through our partners to track what happens to those learners after they go, but that has been difficult. So you saw, Brian's example earlier about getting hired, Akachi's example about talking about these in the employment, the hiring process. That information remains anecdotal. What I can speak to more so though is the other employer engagement we've done, the employer perception work that we've done along the way. And so from the very beginning of the design, I'll go all the way back to just the assessments themselves, which we're talking about now in the broader scope of this ecosystem. But the development of the assessments themselves was very much a co-design process with job seekers and employers through interviews, focus groups, as well as a user testing experience where, the hiring managers and the job seekers went through, provided feedback, not only on the assessments and their perception of the rigor and authenticity of the assessments, but also the value of the credential itself that would be earned as a result of those assessments. All of that feedback gathered along the way was then used to inform iteration and changes to the design of the assessments. And that employer engagement work has continued along the way up to and including, to now. So we've gathered a lot of employer perceptions, also just doing a lot of on-the-road conference presentations with Mary and with Margot and Ian, who was not able to co-present with us today, to continue gathering feedback from the road. And so, we've got some data and some, internal documentation reports that we've put together that I'd be happy to share if that's of interest in terms of the employer findings and then changes we've made as a result that I can share.
Thanks, Tara. Wonderful. Well, we're almost to the end of our time. So again, thank you for a very lively chat, wonderful questions, great discussion. There's a link to some additional resources that Chris has added into the chat. And I see that Ron and Peter have added a few more pieces of feedback and thoughts around the National Skills Passport, which I think is a whole other webinar topic. But no, we would love to continue those discussions. And ultimately, we're just thrilled to have been, on behalf of us at Edalex, to have been a partner, a long-term partner with Education Design Lab, with Unicon, with Smart Resume, and others, as Elaine, and really working together to provide this validation. But what brings it home is those real-world stories of people and how collectively we're helping to improve their lives.
I forgot to put that link in the chat, Dan. Don't log off.
Okay. Well,
happening now. Okay. Stories of validation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Correct.
If you want to hear more about the learner experience, click that link.
Wonderful. Excellent. Great. Well, look, we'll wrap it up there. So my heartfelt thanks, Tara, Mary, Margot, for each of your thoughts, and thanks to your respective teams, and thank you everyone for your time. The fantastic discussion today. Let's keep the discussion going, and let's continue to innovate on behalf of learners around the world.